Ah,
Hi guys.
welcome, my friends, meine Freundin. I am,
Eugene.
you are,
Kasia.
and this is Kasia and Eugene's film reviews for Reprobates. And this week,
Avengers.
and the game.
I guess we can turn off that beautiful music that you can find it on Bandcamp.
Yep.
If you look for disco interiors.
Disco Interiors do our bumper music. That's her singing. That's me doing Sunny to her share behind her. Disco Interiors is somewhere on Bandcamp. Anyway, Avengers Endgame. Not Endgames, Endgame. We saw it the other day. Tried to see it the first weekend. Everything was sold out.
Impossible.
People were going crazy. So I've heard rumors of sleeping on the sidewalk, ordering tickets. The movie has made more money, thank God. The only reason that I'm enjoying this, more money than Titanic. And it's on its way to being the number one grossing movie of all time, which I'm also happy about this because it's shitting all over the Avatar, which are directed by the same guy, who I'm just glad to see him no longer have the number one spot. Because as much of a prick as he seems to be, he always had that in his back pocket. Well, you know what? Your restaurant sucks, and when you can direct a movie that's made more money than any movie in the history of movies, then come talk to me. And he can't say that anymore. So that's a small, thank heaven for small favors. But Avengers Endgame.
It was boring.
Thank you for coming. Good night. Now you have to understand, we have a dual perspective. I am a hardcore comic book head. Have first issues of a lot of these comic books, mostly Marvel, but also got into DC, also off-brand. Like started with Sad Sack. None of you know what I'm talking about. But Kasia, even though she read comic books,
very soft.
Yeah. Less.
I mean, I was kind of raised with people who were reading comics, and all my boyfriends and friends were just into it, so I know it. I was just not super into. Like my favorite comic book is Noble, and Eugene doesn't even know him.
Yep.
Anyway, so I know a little bit about each character.
So the point is that she comes to movies, to this movie, Avengers Endgame, as a fan of movies, as having fairly positive feelings about the first ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we enjoyed them.
It was fun. We had fun, and I felt like the actors who are playing in this movie, they have fun too. It was kind of it was just a funny movie that you are watching for fun.
Right. I come at it from the point of view of a hardcore comic book person, and so that's the standard. So now you understand the ground rules for what we're about to say. Other than just it's boring, good night, thanks for coming. So as a person who has appreciated the previous movies and who's read comic books on and off, maybe not the series that involved Thanos, what did you expand on the boring thing?
I just feel like like they were rushing it instead of actually really think about the story and kind of like the development of the characters. They kind of rushed it because there was time to make some more money. While the heat didn't just lower down yet, so everybody was waiting for that movie. But it just, I don't know, comparing to other three ones, it was for some reason just not that great. The story wasn't good. They still like trying to convince me that Thanos wasn't right. I really feel for Thanos, and I think that if I was him, I would do the same thing, except I would probably wiped out all the humanity from this planet because we are suck.
Well, my problem with this movie, first of all, I coined the phrase the Barabbas effect. As we left the theater, it was like, oh, I'm great that everybody's been restored to the planet. And I could see like, they show you all these good people who were restored to the planet. I mean, those guys are like suddenly, the de-bubble effect. So that everybody comes out of the ether of the other dimension, wherever they were, and they go from bubbles to real. And the guy, I can see him going. He's got a knife in his hand. He goes, "Where was I? Oh yeah, that's right. I was killing people." I mean, but that's a side note.
Yeah.
The real note is the failure of this movie is that Jim Starlin, the guy who created Adam Warlock, he didn't create Captain Marvel, but did great things with Captain Marvel. He created the Thanos story and then spun the Thanos story. Thanos was one of the reasons that he actually quit multiple times when he quit Marvel because they were fucking with his story. This was his baby. This was his character. And that fundamentally what they forgot, neglected, didn't notice is that this entire series, the entire Avengers series, has at its thematic core Thanos.
Mm-hmm.
Except in this movie. And we're treated in this movie to these treacly stories about Captain America, and he cares about this woman that he left in 1945 before he went to sleep. Well, there's a fuck about that. All these humanizing elements that they listen and say, okay, we don't want a Michael Bay movie where things just exploding every 10 minutes. But, so then we get all these side notes, these families, and Hawkeye is a bad together. It's about Thanos. It's a love story, his love affair with death, and nobody remembers that because they haven't read the fucking comic book. Sorry.
No.
Okay.
It's funnier.
Okay, I won't. It's terrible. It's terrible. Thanos ends up sitting on a rock. Do you remember, if you read the comic book, Thanos had become a god. He had the cosmic cube, and he cast it away. You could see his face in the firmament. And that somebody had finally figured out, he threw it away like it wasn't important, but it was really important. He derived his divine powers from this cube. They smashed the cube, and he went back to the planet of Titan or some such thing. But it'd be a great way to combine all these great theories of the world from Nordic, the Vishnu. I'll just combine them all in this kind of uber universe, like Starlin did originally. They didn't do that because they're Hollywood geniuses.
Exactly, they had to do the Hollywood version, so people don't have to do their research for real and check out who are those characters based on. Crowd doesn't like to gain knowledge.
Yep.
They just like to consume.
Well, yeah. The reality of it is,
I like to consume too, but
I
also like to do some research to kind of find out, for example, who Thor really was, or stuff like that. Little basics.
Yeah, that would be not. And the backstory, which you know from your Greek mythology, where Thanos came from. Thanos, whose brother was Eros, whose father was Kronos.
The giants.
These were great stories. How Thanos came to be exiled, all that stuff that was in the original comic book, great backstory stuff. They traded that for what? So Ant-Man could have a few more jokes about buttholes. Forget it.
What the fuck is
Ant-Man? And then I stopped reading comic books in 1981. And then when I started reading them again in 1984, Hulk could talk. So this movie did explain to me how it was that Hulk could actually talk instead of saying Hulk smash. Yeah. Is what I grew up with.
And I really like it. I like that idea that Hulk can actually control his power and speak like a human being while being in a Hulk body.
Yep.
And I really like Hulk. I enjoy reading the comics, and I like the movies, and I married one as well. So I like the idea of a muscle green dude,
drunken,
who's internally constantly angry and full of grudge, but at the same time, he's kind of cute.
the Daffy Danger. It's like the duck.
Fluffy, but also very dark.
Yeah, and dangerous. Daffy Danger, Daffy Duck. So yeah, I think they really blew it. Really, they should have made this movie 30 minutes. They should have appended it to the end of the previous movie. But of course, they could have charged twice for that, right?
Yeah.
So
I also felt like people who were playing in this movie, they didn't have fun anymore. They were kind of like just, cutting off the coupons.
yep, it felt that way too. You're talking about the
Yeah.
acting performance.
Yeah, like seriously, I was just like, guys, like, come on, pull your shit together. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, just you're still in the fucking movie, you know.
Yeah.
I paid for the tickets.
Yeah.
Like, why?
So this is what happens. And the really sad thing is, now they're digging deep into the Marvel comic universe bank. Like, what can we do? We make the movies, and they decided, well, what about this? And they're gonna do Master of Kung Fu, which featured Shang-Chi, who was supposed to be the son of Fu Manchu. And they're gonna make another Jim Starlin. When I say Jim Starlin wrote it, what I'm saying fundamentally the same thing as when I say Nabokov wrote Pale Fire. Like, Jim Starlin wrote it. Harold Pinter wrote a screenplay for this, one of my favorite movies of all time, Servant. And Joseph Lucy wanted to make some changes. And Harold Pinter said, I'll change a word. Because, well, if we could just get this phrase, he goes, not a word. You change a single word, you get rid of my entire script.
Eugene was trying to do that when they proposed to actually make a movie out of Longstone School.
Yeah, and
you probably know the story.
Yeah, at this point now, the whatever money they would have paid me for it would have been exhausted, and what I would be left with was a fucking George Clooney may have starred in the movie of my book, but George Clooney starred in a lot of shitty movies too.
Yeah, but overall, he's all right. I like him.
So if it's not money and there's prestige, it's the true rendering of the story. And I think that's what Starlin would have wanted with Thanos. I mean, he said that he was in the scene.
Yeah, and to be honest, Thanos is one of the most interesting comic characters that ever existed.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love this character.
Well, and there was Adam Warlock, and then the Reluctant. But the Avengers collectively, there's not a lot of dynamic. There's not a lot of grit there. It's like the problems they have with Superman. Well, he can fly. He can see through shit. He's really strong. But he doesn't, like, Batman is exciting because Batman's a fucking psychopath. Nobody was searching the streets at night he's clearly deeply disturbed. And that makes him a compelling character study. The Avengers collectively, Captain America, should I go back? Because I know what happened. I said, I could see the future. I mean, now the defanged Hulk, he's just Bruce Banner, just a big green guy smelling up the joint. Doctor Strange, and he's hanging out with the Asian dudes. What? And the bald chick? Come on.
Like, there was only one. Like, I like seeing Hulk, but I think I enjoyed the most. Just slightly. Where was I?
You said who you enjoyed the most?
Tilda Swinton, because every day when you see Tilda Swinton, it's a good day.
Yep.
So I enjoyed seeing her again. She was brilliant.
So.
Yeah. Like, I'm actually really puzzled. I don't know what to say because, like, it wasn't that bad, but then the hysteria, like, that surrounds that movie is just.
That's why I won't see E.T. and I won't see Titanic.
How? You haven't seen Titanic?
No, and so I feel sort of suckered in seeing these big movies.
3 hours of.
Yeah, that's what. But you know what? You know what I'm psyched about? I just read it in Hollywood Reporter today. Fucking A, the Hellraiser remake. Not a continuation of the series, but Clive Barker himself is back in. Remake.
Yeah.
Remake. End of this year, early or mid next year.
Please, Clive Barker, don't fuck it up.
Well, if the guy who wrote it fucks it up, and he's not been, like, for example, my feelings of Godfather Part 3 are pretty. I'm pretty yielding on it. It's a shitty movie, but I know Coppola's kid had just died, and we were trying to get him out of the house.
Have, like the seconds and thirds are kind of always hard because the first one was brilliant.
Well, Godfather is 1 and 2 were great.
Yeah, but like I said, like you can't just do like you can be great all the time, I guess. Sometimes,
Mm.
you're up, sometimes you're down, and that's
Right.
normal.
But a honest failure is what I would hope. I mean, an honest failure by the person who wrote it, in the case of Clive Barker, is worth, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah. I mean, I hope that it's gonna be good, please.
It won't be the biggest movie, billions of
We are
dollars,
in the
but
need
yeah.
of a very
Yeah.
good horror movie. Like I
Yep.
haven't seen one for a while, so.
Yep, it'll be good. Okay, so now we are going to do our scoring system.
You hear the heartbeats.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
A 1, and a 2, and a 3. Oh, she gave it a 3. I gave it a 5.
Yeah, I wouldn't watch it again. I don't need to look at Pat Thor. But this is not the reason.
Yeah.
It was just not worth it.
Yeah. I mean, let me explain to you, if this ever makes it in front of anybody who's involved in making these movies. There's a big difference between anger and emotional content.
Mm-hmm.
In this instance, there's a big difference between all of that expositionary, narrative, normative stuff of people with their families and doing different things, sleeping, walking, eating, joking, and these crazy CGI fight scenes where everything inside the visual frame is alive.
Yeah.
I mean, you call it suspense or call it whatever, but some of my favorite parts of movies that have been technically action movies are parts where no action is happening.
Yes.
Speaking specifically of the showdown scene, which is a great story attached that we'll tell not now. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, where they're standing in the graveyard over at Stanton's grave. I forget his name. I can't remember. But just eyes. And it was tension full, and it wasn't anger, it was emotional content. Right?
Yes, and everybody knows that scene. I mean, almost everybody.
Right. So it's not like you got to fill it up with all these backstory stuff and the whole nice homey shit, and then at the end you have to have the big. You can have tense moments. You have to play with tension like it's a spice that you put sparingly in your food. But there's just this shit like, okay, we're gonna serve up the big fight scene at the end, and
like cut it the minimum and like show as much detail as possible. Close up. Like I'm like my AV is just like I can't, like I'm losing interest when scenes that full of everything are happening. I just don't know what to focus on, so I'm just like turning off my brain and.
Mm-hmm. There's only one person who does a good job of filming action scenes, as far as I'm concerned, and that's George, whose last name I can't remember. Road Warrior, that Australian cat.
Oh.
Mad Max, and he wrote about it.
That was
in Cinematographer magazine about how he orients his frame.
What I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He cut it to the minimum, and it was a close up. Everything was close.
Yes.
Like,
Yep.
Like when you have a portrait, like the closer you see the face, the more you're kind of identify with the person, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So yes, that Mad Max was fucking great. I love Mad Max. I will actually watch it again.
So she gave it a 3. I gave it a 5 because, like I said, if they had cut it in half and just attached it to the movie before it, I would have been perfectly happy.
I'm giving it 3 only because I don't feel like I have to be specifically generous.
Yep.
Like it wasn't as bad as 3, but I just don't feel like it deserves 5. Like it wasn't half good. It was just like 1/3 good.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, yep. Yeah, there were odd, isolated moments of coolness, but it didn't sustain itself, not for 3 hours. So.
Yep.
Anyway, thank you. You're on the Eugene S. Robinson Show Stomper channel. This is featured on that. If you have any interest, if you have any interest in the other shows, click the little notification giga at the top. If you want to donate some money, you could do so. Patreon.com/The Stomper. THE Stomper. A penny, a nickel, anything helps. Anyway, that's the end of the show.
And we are now going to watch some Schitt's Creek. If you don't know what we mean, go to Netflix and find Schitt's Creek. It's great.
If you're a big fan of SCTV,
Mhm.
you'll be a fan of this as well. We'll see you soon.
Bye bye.